This was the flag Jennifer Piggott proudly hung outside her home during campaign 2024.
We had the flag. I had the shirt. I was a MAGA junkie.
A MAGA junkie who thought her government job would be safe with Donald Trump in office. She was wrong.
You voted for Donald Trump.
I did.
Do you regret that vote?
Yes, I do. To cut the knees out of the working class Americans just doesn't make sense to me. I expected more from President Donald Trump.
What's up, everybody? Major Retired Richard Ojeda here, and they thought Trump would only hurt the people that they didn't like. Liberals, immigrants, the poor. Now they're the ones crying like toddlers with skint knees, shocked that the fire they cheered on is burning down their own neighborhood.
This woman asked us not to show her face for fear of retribution. She recently retired from the Bureau of Fiscal Service because she was afraid of losing her health insurance if she was fired. She also voted for Trump.
Would you still have supported him?
I'm not sure that I would have. The way that it's been done, I'm for balancing the budget, that type of thing, but not in this context. It's just not right.
MAGA didn't want reform. They wanted revenge. And now that they're getting exactly what they asked for, they cannot handle the pain. Yeah. From West Virginia to Virginia, from Minnesota to Florida, the sound you're hearing isn't just liberal outrage. It's Trump voters realizing that they lit the fuse that's now blowing up their own lives.
If you could say anything to President Trump now, what would you say?
I expected better from you. I really did. I expected that you would do what was right and cut waste and fraud and all of those things that you promised us before we elected you in office, but you're not doing that. You're creating a disaster, and I don't know what America's going to look like if this continues.
Federal workers have been fired, cancer research slashed, teachers abandoned, deportation raids targeting patients in dialysis clinics. The very people who once waved MAGA flags are now in disbelief, mouthing the words, "What have I done?" But this isn't a surprise. This was the plan. And the only people who didn't see it coming were the ones who refused to look. Until now. They didn't think that it would hurt them. They thought this administration would only go after the others. But Trump's purge knows no loyalty, no boundaries, and no bottom. Everyone not wearing a Billionaires name tag is absolutely fair game. Now that the wrecking ball is swinging through their own districts, Republican politicians are suddenly scrambling, not to stop the destruction, but to beg for exemptions.
So we're going to keep watching this dynamic. Republicans who can't actually bear what Trump is doing to their own states and to their own constituents, but they're too scared to say they're against it. Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska asking for exemptions to Trump's cuts and actions, specifically for Indian tribes in Alaska. Republican Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa asking for an exemption for Iowa farmers to the tariffs on Canada. Republican Florida Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar asking for an exemption to the indiscriminate deportation policies. Republican Senator Katie Britt asking for an exemption on the massive cuts to scientific and medical research, saying, you couldn't possibly mean Alabama for those cuts, could you? Not Alabama. You want these cuts elsewhere, right?
These Republicans helped build the Trump machine. They enabled the policies. They defended the man. But now that their own voters are in the blast zone, wait, not us, not my state, not my donors, not my re-election chances. This is moral cowardice at its peak. They want the cruelty without the consequences, the culture war without the casualties, the purge so long as it only hurts someone else. They cheered the fire until it started burning down their own neighborhoods. They voted for revenge, and now they're stunned that it didn't come with guardrails. MAGA was never about helping average Americans. It was about punishing the other. These Republicans thought that they were standing behind the flamethrower. Now they're realizing that they've been standing in front of it. And instead of speaking out against the man behind it all, they're doing the political equivalent of duck and cover, writing exemption letters, begging for carve-outs, and pretending that they didn't help light that match. This is the bait and switch they never saw coming. And now it's too late.
Stacey said, quote, when we said safer borders, I thought he was thinking, let's stop the drugs from coming into the country. I didn't know he was going to start raiding places. She said she didn't believe he would actually follow through on some of the more hardline policies he touted during the campaign. 49-year-old Omaha, Nebraska resident said, quote, "Now I'm like, dang, why didn't I just pick Kamala?" Emily Anderson from Duluth, Minnesota, categorizes her vote for Trump this year as the, quote, "biggest mistake of my life." She is horrified by Trump's focus on deportations and use of Guantanamo Bay to hold migrants. Anderson said, quote, "I feel so stupid, guilty, regretful. Embarrassed is a huge one. I am absolutely embarrassed that I voted for Trump."
As we continue to hear horror stories and reports about Trump supporters regretting their votes with his first month back in office now behind him, Republican officials are trying to have their cake and eat it too. Well, it's admittedly satisfying to some degree to see these people finally come to terms with reality and recognize what we've been warning them about for years now. Instead of directing your anger at the people who are duped by Trump and the Republicans and blaming them solely for putting him back in power, focus that anger and energy on the systems in place that encourage someone like Trump to seize power like he's been doing so far.
And he's cutting out all of this
Sean.
waste. Well, why would you hate somebody like
It's
that?
so
I'm
basic.
grateful.
You know what? It's very basic. Let's think about this. In our administration, we have a tremendous amount of billionaires who are successful businessmen. And I could name them all, but we know who they are, who have taken a leave, sold their companies, walked away from their lives to sacrifice to help America be great again. There are many. Now, Elon's become a target for one very simple reason, because he is cutting the funding to these politicians who have put their bureaucratic, personal financial gain and interest above the American people.
Take Trump's legal counselor, Alina Habba, openly bragging about how many billionaires are deeply involved with his second administration, for example. If we had a proper system of checks and balances in place and you physically couldn't profit from federal contracts, insider trading, and other forms of corruption, billionaires, multinational corporations, and grifters would have drastically fewer incentives and methods to siphon away wealth from the American public into their own pockets.
Donald Trump, as we saw, was inaugurated several weeks ago. And who you saw behind him mattered. The people who stood behind Donald Trump at his inauguration are some of the people that are playing a major role in upholding and supporting what is going on. That is important to know because we need to know who are the folks that are responsible. And as we all saw, when Donald Trump was sworn in, he had several billionaires standing behind him. He had, of course, Elon Musk. He had Jeff Bezos. He had Mark Zuckerberg. You also had the CEOs of major corporations like TikTok and Apple, etc. These are people who are taking part in their own way, the same way that I'm telling you all to kind of divide and conquer. They are also dividing and conquer. They're acting very strategically and they are each playing their own role, right? So the way that they're playing their own role, we can each be playing our own role, all right? And right now, what is happening is that all of these tax cuts that billionaires and millionaires have been just getting high off the hog on over the last couple of years are now about to run dry if they do not reauthorize them, if they do not extend them, and not only if they do not extend them, but ideally they want to add to them. Massive tax cuts for some of the largest corporations that exist in America and in the world. And so they have a massive thing at stake. So right now, their task is to extend these tax cuts. And what Elon Musk wants is for these tax cuts to not only be extended, but to apply to him in a larger way than ever before so that he can amass even more money than ever before.
The Republican Party is so effective in convincing their base to vote against their economic interests and shield billionaires and corporations from criticism over moves like this because they have done a great job letting them know that marginalized communities will not receive any types of benefits or a leg up in the system. So as long as they know that black people, LGBTQ plus community, women, immigrants, they're not receiving any type of rewards or something that's going to boost their economic situation, they're fine with it. They even though it's going to harm them as well. But that racism, that misogyny is so powerful, right, in their hearts, that it leads them to do things like this where they're going to be worse off.